Hello and welcome to Very Small Talk, and it's the third episode today, and you may have seen from the adverts that I've been running. Today we're having Apocrypha Now, or Ben, as he's known to his mum, uh, on the channel. We're going to review his work. He's right out there, on like an edge. I'm not going to say bleeding edge, but he's on the edge. Pushing the hobby forward with all of his work and games design and stuff, and I'm sure we're going to have a wonderful conversation with Ben. And yeah, if you're new to the channel, thank you for taking the time to come and join us. This is the third episode, and it's about miniature sculpting and painting. We'll touch on technical points, hopefully, but we're going to hang out as well with my friends from Instagram and various other discords and stuff like that, get to know each other, but also talk shop about the hobby and just have a bloody good time, really. So without any more procrastination, I want you to meet Ben, and welcome to the show, Ben.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing, mate?
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, good, thank you.
Good to
How are
see you again. Very well, yeah. Obviously, we're not doing a live stream today because the internet is crap. So we're going to do our best recording, and I'll put it up later after the show. But yeah, it's great to see you, mate. I know you've been on holiday and you had a great time. Feeling refreshed?
Well rested and refreshed. Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's great news.
But it's always nice to be home as well.
Yeah. I'm living in Texas now, and I've been here nearly a year, and I do miss home. I do miss Blighty. We moan about it when we're there, don't we? But
When you're not,
it's a great country, trust me, and so is America. It's great in many ways. The people are lovely. I can't complain about that. But it's culturally it's very different, even though we speak the same language. So yeah, we just had all the Easter holidays and stuff like that. Missed the the roast, all the meat and veg, stuff like that. But
that's a shame. I mean, it was more practical. I'd offer to, to you. I don't think it would last the journey.
I tried to cobble something together, but not quite the same.
Excellent.
Okay, right then. So, yeah, Ben, how long have you been hobbying?
How long have I been a geek? When I was about 9, I had a friend at primary school who, for his birthday, he got the second edition 40k starter set, which is like the iconic one with the orcs and the Gretchen and the monopose Space Marines. And that was it, really. I was doomed from that point. So I went around his house and we didn't play proper games, but we sort of moved models around and rolled some dice and things.
Cool.
Did the voices and the sounds of explosions and things because we were kids. And then sort of through most of school, I had a kind of an interest in Warhammer 40k and models. I also did a lot of sort of scale model making, so sort of Airfix, Tamiya, Revel, kind of military models, which was interesting as well. I've always been interested in military history. And then, the classic kind of cliche, then I was a teenager and then I went to college and university and ditched it kind of thing happened when you concentrate on other things at that point in your life, be it studies or not studying. And then after university, I then sort of came back to it, really. So just again, from a modelling perspective, to begin with, I bought a few boxes of Space Marines just because I remembered, these were fun back when I was a
bit nostalgia.
Yeah, a bit of nostalgia, exactly. The kind of mid-20s malaise where I was like, oh, what am I doing? And then since then I've sort of become a little bit more involved gradually. So
just a bit.
Just a bit, yeah. So moved on from 40k and then really got started when Age of Sigmar started as well. I always thought 40k was quite complicated and you needed a lot of stuff and a lot of models. Whereas Age of Sigmar, sort of first edition Age of Sigmar, it was almost a bit too light on the rules. You could kind of do anything and, you could build any kind of army you liked. But I liked that because I could raid the enormous GW catalogue of fantasy models and pull together interesting armies.
So that's like a little gateway then into the
Yeah,
wargaming
absolutely.
element. Yeah.
Yeah, so then I got a lot more involved, kind of my local gaming community. That is my Nagash Necromancer model from a cheap little sort of one tournament I had with some friends back in the good old days before the pandemic.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's sort of when it sort of went from just doing some model kits to becoming a lot more involved in like actively gaming and hanging out with people. I'm really lucky. There's a nice local game store near where I live with several different active communities. So I could sort of always get a game of Age of Sigmar in all the way through first and second edition. Yeah, and that's sort of where I
That's
really sort of
excellent.
cut my teeth doing the whole, building, painting, modeling, and
Yeah.
gaming.
Yeah. And
Really.
yeah. So this miniature game isn't just painting, is it? And it's there's so many facets to it that it is. I don't know. It's one of these hobbies that just sort of absorbs you completely. You can go as far as as you want with this, and I think you're pushing it
Yeah.
quite far with some of the things that you're doing. Probably a little bit more
Yeah.
than most, which
I mean,
is
I
great.
I think back when I was doing the sort of Age of Sigmar stuff, I was fairly safe. I'd buy a model kit and I'd follow the instructions and I'd build it as it was meant to look, and then I'd try to paint it as it was meant to look. And you could look at my army from the other side of the room and you'd have a pretty good idea of, oh, that's a Nurgle army or that's an undead army. Things looked the way they were meant to look, and I wasn't particularly adventurous. I tried to do things nicely, but I didn't really do any sort of mad kit bashing.
Right.
Um, I think I got weird as society got weird. So like late 2019, early 2020, when things in the real world were getting a bit weird, that's probably when my hobby got a bit weirder
Right.
as well.
Okay. That's interesting. So yeah,
So
like a pressure release maybe. It's
yeah,
like,
so I remember kind of like late 2019, I started dabbling with turnips. I started Instagramming like 2018,
okay.
and most of my photos are kind of um, just like pictures of me and my friends going to Warhammer World and playing a big 4-way game of Age of Sigmar and stuff like that. They're all kind of like normal stuff.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember how I came across it, but it just came up in my feed as something you might like, and there was one of Max Fitzgerald's incredible photos of these cobbled together historical medieval armor and Napoleonic arms, and I was just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then I didn't really look back from there. So kind of
Okay.
went a bit full on
Let's
doing.
have a look at some of that because there we go. Let's skip through these photos because I've. Yeah, oh gosh, this was the one that I saw, and it was like,
Yeah,
okay. So, I mean, for those that don't know, just explain what Turnip
yeah.
28 is, because I had
So
no clue. But as
yeah,
soon as
that's
I
a really
saw
good
it, it
one.
was just like, what the heck?
So there is a British artist called Max Fitzgerald, who's on Instagram as I think Anonymous Max.
Yeah.
He's done loads of illustration for Games Workshop publications and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And he did some concept sketches for basically a kind of post-apocalyptic Napoleonic battlefield and war. So if the Napoleonic War never ended and kind of got a bit chaotic and a bit weird, and they started digging up like old medieval weapons that were sort of coming out of the mud because the war was just grinding on and on and on, and then what if the world was infected with this kind of mutating, never-ending network of like turnips that sort of consumed and mutated the entire world. And it was really weird and really dark. So yeah, it's a sort of 28mm scale miniatures war game. You have about, I don't know, 25 models aside ish. So it's kind of you have a regiment is your army, but that could be kind of as small as like 10 models or so, or as big as kind of 25ish. And yeah, it's just a fantastic excuse to make really weird models. So like I said, the kind of creators' original models were all made from Herrick miniatures, historical miniatures. So things like Agincourt suits of armor with visors. One of the kind of key aesthetic cues of Turnip 28 is that you have your face obscured. So um, everyone's got these kind of ridiculous rusty metal helmets and buckets and things, and you've got sort of mutating turnips and things growing out of your body because you're kind of becoming part of the mud, and it's all. Yeah, so yeah, this is an example where I just took I think that's Foundry Miniatures medieval sort of agricultural peasant, and basically cut its face off and just replaced it with some tufts. So he's just got stuff growing out of where his face should be.
Bizarre, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
in terms of like painting, it's all sort of very muddy, very warm colours, lots of rust, lots of weathering, lots of drippy stuff. People, you can flick your paint off the paintbrush to sort of get mottled textures.
Yeah.
You can use oils and enamels to make sort of drippy things.
Yeah, it's just similar to the sort of grimdark painting
Yeah,
style, isn't
definitely.
it? It doesn't
Yeah.
seem to be any limit. So like, there's a lot of dirt there, isn't there, on that particular item? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So you can really, in some people it's just a question of like burnt umber or burnt sienna. It's just solid brown paint.
Yeah.
Maybe picking out some metal edges. Um, Normally, I sort of approach my models. I like painting them fairly quickly, so I tend to go for quite light undercoats, so whites and greys, and then use contrast paints over the top.
Yeah, they're
'Cause
very,
they're
very popular,
nice
aren't they?
and quick. If they come out a bit splodgy or a bit mottled on some of the big flat areas, doesn't matter because I'm going to then cover it in mud and like loads of Acrex Earthshade. Or I've recently started using some enamel washes, so things like AK Interactive's some of their vehicle washes, and the famous streaking grime is really good. And also Dirty Down Rust is
Uh,
magic as well.
I've heard a lot about this. I've not actually
Oh,
got any yet.
you've got to try it, mate. It's really good. It's really good. It's a little bit scary at first because it smells very bad for you. Sort of one of those things you open and you think, oh, should I be wearing like goggles and a mask?
Yeah, right.
Then you kind of splodge it on your model and you think, great, I've just wrecked my model because it kind of goes like just brown straight away or black. But if you leave it alone for half an hour, then you kind of get these really nice.
So it's like
Literally,
chemical
it
reaction.
oxidizes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get these really nice
Huh.
sort of rusts coming through,
Bizarre.
which really helps with things like when you've got sort of rivets, it kind of pools like a wash, and then you get a really rich oxide colour in those kind of little recesses. And
Growth. Yeah.
so it's quick and easy, really. Like you can put lots of time and effort into the kit bashing side of it, but then the painting side of it, you can be a bit fast and loose. But because
Yeah.
everything looks muddy and a bit downtrodden and a bit
Yeah.
sort of cruddy, you sort of quite quickly some sort of nice results.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so who does Dirty Down Rust then? Can you remember
I'm
who
not
it's?
sure. No, they do a set of, I think, three. There's like Rust, Moss, and Verdigris.
Oh yeah, they're classic.
Yeah, your classic weatherings. And I think originally it was made for theatre and film and TV for like prop, sort of making distressed looking props.
So you know it's going to be good. Yeah, high quality stuff.
And yeah, it's there's loads of videos on YouTube now. People just dunking Warhammer models in it, and it looks better than you can paint rust. It's actual rust. You make the model go rusty.
It's
and
crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to invest in some of that. I've not yet actually painted any turnip stuff. I like you though. When I saw it, fell in love with well, it's crazy. It's bonkers, obviously. The aesthetic is crazy and very grim dark, but there's so much fun. And I think
definitely.
I've just started looking at the story behind the rules and the different classes and stuff. And I thought actually it's probably a great game to play because
game-wise, it's my favourite game.
Right.
You know, I've in the past sort of 2 years, it's definitely the game I've played the most of. It's really, you know, I definitely encourage you if you're
So
starting to read the rules, you know, you should really go for it because it's
yeah,
very rewarding to
I mean,
play.
I'm in a bit of a backwater here, and this is partly why I'm doing this as well, because I've tried to find some hobby nerds in this little town. So I think I'll have to start a club up or something, you know.
I think, yeah, definitely start a club, but especially with turnips because uh, you know, if you're going to be kit bashing things, you're probably going to end up with like halves of boxes that you don't use for stuff. Like, oh, I need all the legs from this one or all the arms from this one. So I always think if you start a kit bashing project, it's always easy to like start a second army, and then
Yeah,
you'll have a second army that you can then, you know, getting your friends to, or you know, finding someone to try a weird game is always much easier if you can just like give them an army to play
off.
with
Yeah,
straight
exactly.
away.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, you're right. So with regards to the like kit bashing element, this is huge in Turnip. The game, there's just so many people have fallen in love with it for that. I think because
yeah,
it doesn't have to be. You know, super accurate. Like you see some of the sculpting is very very clean. This, I think, it draws people in because actually it encourages the sort of messy paint work, and you know, anything goes. And there's some that I think that's one of the things that I like about it is that people feel like they can have a go at
yeah.
this.
It's I think quite often if you think about like scale modeling or like um, high-end tabletop modeling, if you're building a tank or some infantry, weathering and you know making things look battle worn, it's kind of seen as like a little bit of like an extra step,
Hmm.
or you know something that you like learn to do when you learn once you've done the painting and you've got that down sort of to a T. You then like up your game with weathering. I think what's nice about Turnip is if you hit bash a model and there's a gap in the model, you don't need to get the green stuff out. You don't need to get the files out. You just fill it with mud. Like you can just cake it with
Brilliant.
crap, but it ends up looking brilliant. You know, it makes it really. Um, you know, I've seen some wonderful models that are painstakingly beautifully painted with you know edge
Hmm.
highlights and color gradients and you know glazes and all that kind of stuff. Um, then if you're going to dip it in mud, then
Yeah,
why?
yeah, exactly.
You know, I think part of the reason I did as much turn as I did, because I think I've got last count like 6 or 7 different turnip armies, which is probably a bit much, is because I kind of got into a bit of a happy cycle where I would kit bash something, paint it fairly quickly because I was doing contrast paints and I was going crazy with the mud and really slapping it on. And then I'd get like a bit of a dopamine bump because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I finished something and it looks nice. So then I'd do it again, and then I'd finish that and it would look nice, and I'd feel happy, and then I'd do it again. And
Hmm.
I think because Turnip's got quite a low model count for a you know a big war game,
Hmm.
not painting like 300
Yeah.
hussars or you
Yeah.
know what actual historical Napoleonic war gamers have to do, which is really daunting. If you're only doing like 30 guys, then you can kind of can churn them out quite quickly,
Yeah, I
and
bet.
or
Yeah.
you can spend more time on customization and the kind of you know people do a lot of world building with their turnip stuff, like lots of narrative elements. You know,
Hmm.
I played a game of turnip earlier today against one of my buddies who's mangling minis on Instagram.
Yes. Yep. I've seen his profile. We're
Who's
following him.
one of
Yep.
my favourites, and like he's got this cannon, and every time we play with this cannon, I always like stop and go and look because it's like a full diorama. And there's actually a guy who stood at the back having a wee, just like off the edge of the model. Like there's just so much crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I was also today I was playing with Ever Chasing Calm,
Yep. Brilliant.
um, and you know he's got this banner for his new turnip army, and the banner's like it's sort of 3 inches square, and like, it's just next to this little 28 mm guy, and it's fantastic. It's beautifully painted. He's got this massive root vegetable
Yeah.
on the flag. Um, so yeah, no, there's just yeah, it's just great. I was also today I was playing with Rogue Inquisitor, and from the looks of it, he did his turnip army in about a week. You know, from when he was posting on Instagram, like, you know, oh, I've built this, I primed this, I base coated this, and then ta-da, I've got a, you know, finished turnip army. But again, seeing that in person, incredibly creative. You know, he used bird skulls from the Citadel bird skull kit, just on some, I think they were Victrix line
Perfect.
infantry. And loads of tufts, really nice bases. He had loads of Nurgle bits and other bits from kit bashes, and just you can just do what you like. It's a real like vehicle for your own creativity and stuff.
Oh,
So
I
it's,
definitely agree with you. I mean, what I've seen, I know I'm following most of those profos, those guys that you mentioned, your mates, and yeah, I'm just bowled over by it because for years I've seen like the heavy metal style, you know,
yeah,
Warhammer painting. As you know, I mean, I've been in the hobby, in and out of the hobby for ages, but yeah, I think most of the time I've been to, you know, Warhammer World, Nottingham, and been in their museum. I don't know if you've ever been in there, but that's
yes, yeah, I have, yeah,
phenomenal. And
yeah.
everything is like Golden Demon standard, isn't it? Which is
Everything's
like
perfect. Yeah,
everything's
yeah,
perfect, and it's such a contrast to see something that is on purpose not perfect. It's perfect in its imperfectness, which
yes,
is,
yeah.
you know, it's great. And
It's perfect for its own little setting and its own
yeah,
little world.
yeah,
Yeah,
and the creativity is exactly what I think, you know, it sparks my imagination. And there's no rules, you know, and not there is rules in the game, but there's no rules in what you can do with regards to, as long as you can explain what it is, I suppose. You know, like
yeah, yeah. As
why
long as you know
why have you got a unit of
playing a
pigs?
game.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. You need to at least have a
But
rough kind of wizard. Yeah,
yeah, the so this guy here then. We've got a crown of root matter or whatever. No
yeah,
face. So the face
yeah,
is deleted with this hood.
yeah,
And
yeah. He's got like a sort of metal kind of sort of plague doctor style
Plague
hood
Doctor,
with
yeah,
green.
right.
So
So would this be green stuff then? Have you
yeah,
modelled? Yeah.
so there's not really a lot in terms of kit bashing on this model. It's a Perry Miniatures, again, like generic medieval sort of peasant character. Um, in the game of 1028, you build your army. You have like your little regiment, and normally that's got sort of 3 officers, and then you have like 4 units. There's no points or anything in turnips. It's just you have 4 things, and I have 4 things. So I could have 4 cannons, you know, which would be great for shooting, but I wouldn't be able to capture any objectives because cannons can't move. You could have 4, I don't know, 4 big blocks of infantry, which would be great for sort of stomping around, but they're not necessarily the best fighters. So it balances out pretty well for a game without points,
Okay.
which is again another thing I really like because I hate like the math hammer kind of, you know, oh, here's my 1,999 points, you know, army
Yeah.
of something, and you know, half of them have got upgrades. I can't be doing with any of that. I just
Yeah.
like I've got 4 things. Um, for that, you normally choose a cult. So the idea is in the sort of post-apocalyptic world that Max created for the game, the turnips have like corrupted reality, and they've corrupted people's minds, and people worship these vegetables, and
It's hilarious, isn't it?
you know they cause mutations and hallucinations when you eat them, going a bit mad, and it's all very sort of Mordheim meets Monty Python meets
Magic
the end of the
mushrooms.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all very odd. And these different cult give you different abilities, or they like unlock special units for you to play in the game. And one of them is called the Red Ribbon Society. So basically, the idea is they're gardeners, and they grow prize vegetables. Um, so in the game, you need some gardeners, and then as the game goes on, in all the bits of dangerous terrain, you end up having like a little allotment where you grow vegetables, and then you can like harvest vegetables to do stuff in the game. So either I think they can give you like extra attacks, or you can re-roll things. They give you benefits. But if your opponent manages to get any of their troops onto your allotment, they can sort of stamp on all the vegetables, and then you lose them, and then you don't get any benefits. So each of the different cults prompt really different playstyle. So this is one of my gardeners for
It
that
is, isn't
cult.
it? Yeah, makes
And
total
I made
sense.
lots of little weird sort of vegetables for him to grow on his little allotment, from seashells and flowery tufts, and I think there's a tooth in there as well.
Brilliant.
Just all sorts of stuff really. Um,
That's great.
so yeah,
That's yeah, and knowing the rules, you know what elements to build and stuff, and it
yeah,
it
yeah.
just has such a great aesthetic, and it's all broken down like you
It's
say, and
just so much fun to do. It's
yeah.
great, and like I said, it's for the past few years, it's definitely been like my majority of my hobby time is turnip stuff because it's just like I said,
So
it's fun to do,
these
and the games are
yeah, I can see why you love it. Really can, and I I wish I had that club that you go to just round the corner so I could to see a game in action because I imagine it'd be a hoot. The the base work. So this is really pretty, for considering what it is. What materials are you using
so
to make this?
it's really simple. That is Games Workshop Sterland Mud.
This is the
And
mud, yeah, and then
yep, so you just splodge that onto the base.
mhm,
Use like a nice brush to get like a little bit of a gnarly texture. Leave it to dry, and then go over the top with Nuln oil or silicon grey, which is very similar to Nuln oil but a bit darker. And then normally kind of just goes a bit semi-gloss on its own. I don't do like varnish or anything. It's just there's something about straight Nuln oil applied over sterling mud goes a bit glossy and a bit gloopy.
right.
So it kind of just it does what it says on the tin. It's mud paint and it ends up looking nice and muddy. Um, don't Most of my turnips I've not done any like pigments or anything. I want them to look wet.
Yeah.
And then if you scroll up in the image, I think you might be able to see it on the gardener. I then normally do some splodges of that mud going up. So like his sort of fork handle, you can see there's like some mud going up
Mhm.
the sort of up his kind of stave and around his boots, and then again just brush up some oil or some silicone grey, and it just kind of ties the model to the base a bit and
Yeah, definitely. And
sort of seats them.
the tufting and the flowers, they look great. So, where are they from? Are
Um,
you making them?
I think I never make my own tufts. I'm a fraud. I buy in tufts. So I think the the sort of unflowery one on the left of
Mhm.
the image, I think is Wargamers grass.
Okay.
Um, one on the right, bizarrely, is just like a sort of generic brand I got from Amazon.
Okay.
So I got like it was quite weird actually. It came in like a little bucket, and all the normally they come on a strip of greaseproof paper so you can like peel them off. They came like wrapped in a sort of spiral in this bucket,
Huh.
which was a really weird way of delivering tufts. Um, but they also it was sort of normal like grasses and things, some burnt grass or some dry grass, some very lush sort of fluorescent green tufts. But there were also some sort of flower tufts built in as well,
Mm.
which I didn't really use for anything. And they've got the flowers themselves made of some kind of little particulate of I don't know if it's like really thick paint or something a bit powdery.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know how they do it. I don't know. Maybe they dunk the tuft
Yeah. Right.
in one end and then it's just next to the edges.
Yeah.
Um, so I didn't use them for anything. And then I thought, well, I've got, I need to make something look like a kind of verdant, bountiful vegetable patch. And it sort of really contrasts with
Mhm.
the rest of my turnip stuff. So
Yeah.
I
Definitely.
stuck some flowers down.
Very effective. And then we've got a. Is this a pig?
That's a tooth, I think.
It's a tooth, of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
What?
tooth.
I just saw an eye there and
Yeah.
thought I've seen
Um,
and a
um,
tooth.
yeah, that's not a real tooth. So
No.
again, this is an idea I pinched from Max. In the game, when you're one of the things I really like about turnips is it's very like kinetic and movement based. So, um, if one of my units shot one of your units and ended up hitting a couple of your guys and a couple of them died, your unit would then like immediately run away, sort of retreat. So it's very common in a game of turnip for like units to like go all the way across the board and all the way back again. And as the battle goes on, they get more and more panicked. So you need some kind of way of like adding some counters to your unit so you can see how stressed they are. And Max came up with this mad idea of like using these little clumps of fake teeth that like just sit in the mud. So I again went on the internet and found you can buy resin teeth
You
quite
are
easily,
joking. Can you really?
which they're again they're meant for like prop making. So people doing sort of prosthetics or making monsters. You
Yeah.
get these little tiny little resin
Huh.
teeth. They're one to one for a human tooth. Um,
Huh.
and yeah, so I had some of those left over.
I'm gonna have to get
Um,
myself some of them, aren't I? Definitely.
teeth are good. Teeth are good. I use most of the molars for like because they kind of sit quite nicely and they're quite sort of stocky and round, and you get like a nice contact with the base because they're sort of square in proportion. I use those for my panic tokens. And I had a few canines and incisors left over, which I have just been sprinkling on other models for a while now. Just
Of all
throw a
the
tooth in.
of all the chaotic things I thought we'd be talking about, I had no idea we'd be talking about teeth. It's brilliant. Oh dear.
Yeah.
What have we got here, Ben?
So this is my competition winning model.
Oh.
So I can't remember if it was last year or the year before last. A while ago, um, Max organised a kitbash competition. So there is a campaign system for Turnip 28, and the idea is your commanding officer, your snob, no, sorry, your toady. Okay, there's bizarre
Yeah.
funny names for all the characters, but basically your general can acquire mutations from ingesting turnips. And being exposed to all the chaoticness of the turnip world. And in the campaign book, there's this huge bonkers table that you can roll on to generate mutations. So the idea for kitbash competition was, you roll on this table 3 times to get 3 mutations, and then you have to use that to make a mini,
Brilliant.
which will then be judged. I can't remember who judged the first one, which is embarrassing. I can't remember. Anyway, so the mutations I rolled up were number one. It basically turns into a pub. So he's got like a cask of ale growing out his back. There's this little lad running after him with a bottle. I can imagine he's trying to like steal something fermented turnip juice or something. I don't know what they would drink
Is that little
necessarily.
tap off the back of it, yeah?
Yes, there's a little tap off the back there. And then because I thought, well, it's a pub. Traditional ye olde pub would have a sign. So I thought, well, what am I going to hang the sign off? Well, I need to build a roof. So then this one thing that your snob can produce ale or some kind of thirst quenching drink turned into and becoming a very small mobile publican house.
Brilliant.
The other mutations were. His hat made him look like a horse, so that's just why he got like a sort of horse's head
Oh yeah.
stuck on.
How bizarre.
Then I think the third one was he had to have a long tongue, which is really the sort of smallest part of the model. Because the idea is it's kind of just like flopping out of the mouth hole of this helmet. There's this long, prehensile.
It's got some
and
strange
all of
arms
yeah,
there.
that's I think that's a Games Workshop zombie arm.
Oh yeah, I can see it now.
And all of these mutations, they have effects in the game as well.
Brilliant.
So I think the fact he's a pub, I think he can give like a nearby unit a certain benefit in the game and that kind of thing. So the shingles, they were very easy to do. That was a sheet of I want to say 2 mil balsa wood, which was a bit too thick, so I had to cut it into shingles and then split it down the length of the sheet.
Wow.
What's good about balsa wood is, although it's quite sort of smooth and flat because it's so soft, if you just get a pin, you can scratch a wooden grain texture back into it.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So
Yeah.
That's my shingle roofs normally just some split balsa wood.
Super effective, Ben. It really is. I was hoping you were going to say balsa wood because that's accessible to many, isn't it? And
Yeah,
you know, we
balsa wood's
all
great
remember
stuff.
that from school, don't we?
Yeah, yeah.
I remember that that game used to give us in physics where he's like, how much weight can you support on a balsa wood
Oh, yeah,
structure?
yeah, yeah,
So that
yeah,
competition, that was really good.
yeah.
Bit of a
No, we had a
blast.
similar thing. We had to try and build a tower out of paper and like see how many marbles you could put in the top of it, that kind of thing. So it was all about like rolling up really tight tubes
Yeah,
and building things with lots of triangles, so you know, sort of get that sort of thing.
yeah. The logical progression from physics and craft
Yeah.
design technology is
So
Turnip, isn't it? It really
is,
is.
is you know a small walking vegetable powered pub with a horse's head. Yeah, absolutely.
Your teachers would be
Um,
proud.
I often wonder what someone would think if they could see what I've ended up doing.
We had such high
There's
hopes.
also where did it all go wrong? Yeah. There's also the little fella running after the pub. His helmet is a 3D print.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so Saint Decent on Instagram has she paired up with Max, and they ended up sculpting a lot of the sort of printable assets um,
Yeah.
as well. So I do print stuff. I've got, I don't know if you can see it just over my shoulder.
Mhm.
That's my, oh, there we go. That's my little 3D printer in the corner.
Is that a
Um,
Mars? Is it Mars?
it is a Mars,
Elegant
yes.
Mars. I thought I
Yes,
could recognise the
yes, Lego
colour in that
Mars.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really, really good. Really good.
I'm
Quite
still yet to get
stressy the
one.
first
I've
time.
got to get one. I'm still very new on my journey.
Yeah,
Another reason why
first
this
couple of
channel
prints
exists.
was first couple of prints was pretty hair raising. It's really good fun. It's really good fun, and it's great for things like this where if there's just like just a specific thing that you don't necessarily have knocking around on a sprue somewhere,
Yes.
you can normally rustle something up and print it.
How long would something like that take to print, Ben?
I'm going to be annoying now because there's no simple answer to that. It does depend on a lot of factors. So, main one is like your layer thickness. So, resin 3D printers basically you have a vat of which is your resin, and then you have like a mobile work plate that goes down, and the bottom of the tank is translucent. There's like a LCD green. There's really powerful ultraviolet lights that makes the resin go hard. Screen displays like a negative image, and basically you print it in layers, and then that build plate goes up and down, and then resin sticks to it, and you kind of build it up in layers. Um, Depending on how thick your layers are, massively affects the level of
Of
detail you get.
course. Yep. Yeah, that makes
The more
sense.
layers, the more you know.
So
If each
resolution.
exposure,
Yeah.
exactly its resolution. Yeah. So each layer, depending on your resin, might take 5 seconds. If you've got 1,000 layers, or if you've got 300 layers, you get a massively different print time. So
Yeah.
normally with my stuff, I go for 0.03 millimeters.
0.03.
It's
So
like your layer thick.
30 microns. Is it? No.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Is it 30 0.03? Yeah. Okay. Very, very fine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And normally you can't see the layers at all.
A bit like this pixelated image that I've got here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that doesn't look when you go in that close. That's not. It's partly real like dark art of 3D printing is the orientation of your model when you print it.
Okay.
So you have like a cube and you just put it on you loaded it into your printer and you told it to print perpendicular to the build plate. That would present problems. So basically, when your build plate goes up and down and lifts away from that screen at the bottom, it puts stress on the model.
Yeah, of course.
So if you've got like a big, wide, flat, unsupported area, it's more likely to bow and sag, or worst case, completely split. So you end up printing something that's just stuck to the bottom of the tank whilst the build plate goes up and down with nothing sticking to it.
Yeah.
And curved areas again are a problem because if you can imagine that 30 micron layer or whatever it is, as it gets closer and closer to the top of a sphere, you're going to end up seeing little like contour lines.
Yeah,
as you get to the
I've
top.
seen that. Yeah, I've seen that.
So what you're trying to do is you're trying to orient your, if we were printing that cube again, you'd probably want to sort of tilt it 45 degrees in one axis and 45 degrees in the other, and with a load of supports. So the first bit you print is actually a really small point of contact, and then that means your load is basically better distributed against your build plate, and you're less likely to get splits and things. So complicated shapes like this, where you've got curves going in sort of all three axes, is very difficult to spin them around into such an orientation where you don't end up with one bit that's perpendicular to the print screen, and then that's where you get your layers. But the good thing about printing at 0.3 millimeters is normally like one layer of fairly normal acrylic paint will completely fill them in.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, of course. Thought that.
It's kind of there are a lot of variables of printing, a lot of variables.
Yeah.
So anyway, so with my setup, that would probably take less than an hour to print.
Okay.
It's like that sort of that big-ish.
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty satisfying, isn't it? An hour.
Yeah, and like if you're the other thing is when you're 3D printing, it's kind of the sideways dimension is for free. Your tallest bit is the bit that's going to take the longest to print. So if you've got any space on that build plate, anything shorter than that, you're kind of not adding to the time. So it's kind of for free.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I always try to print nice crowded build plates where I've got lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Let's sort of make the most of it, really.
That was.
It does make sort of cleaning up a little bit more fiddly.
Yeah, because with all the supports and that, I've actually bought some 3D models, printed models, some of the knucklebone stuff.
Knucklebones is great.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I'm on his Patreon every month.
Yes, so am I actually.
Yeah.
And only just started because I just want it's only a cup of coffee a month. You know what I mean? It's basically what it is. But I haven't got a printer, so I haven't downloaded any of his stuff. But I like the aesthetic, and it's similar, isn't it?
You seen how he sculpts his stuff?
Yes, yeah.
He does the virtual reality thing.
I'm intrigued by it. I mean, I sculpt, with my hands and stuff like that. But I've also downloaded Blender because I want to have a go at that. And I've got like a not a graphics tablet, but I've got a drawing tablet, if that makes sense, without the screen. But then when I asked him, and he said, "Oh, I did mine a little bit differently." He said, "I use virtual reality," and I was like, "Oh, okay, this sounds really interesting."
Yeah.
And then he jumped onto Instagram a couple of weeks ago, and he put a couple of little live streams up of him working on it. And I thought, "Oh, that looks great." He's like just going around it and just adding a little bit there. It looked like he was welding,
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's definitely why his minis look so unique.
Yeah.
Because they do have that kind of hand sculpted quality, and they're very organic.
Yes, totally.
But yeah, the fact that he's using his whole body to sort of sculpt them. They're brilliant, and they paint up beautifully. I printed off a load of his Napoleonics that he did for Silver Bayonet.
Right.
And they're like their facial expressions. They've all got like moustaches. They've all got like slouching shoulders, and they look really miserable. And yeah, they just paint up brilliantly. I also did his some of his like World War One sort of Forbidden Psalm Last War stuff. So like trench raiders, like techno barbarians and gas masks, and like coal scuttle helmets and trench raiders and that kind of stuff. And they're just great. They're brilliant.
I haven't seen all of those. I'm still, sort of getting my head around all of these different profiles. But knucklebone miniatures are right out there on the, the sweet spot for me. And
they're really fun. They're really fun.
4 of his iconic ones that I've yet to paint up, and I thought about Turnip when I bought them, because I thought these lend themselves perfectly, don't they, to that sort of thing. But I will paint them just as they are, without any but I was thinking about going, without any kit bashing, but I was thinking about like studying John Blanche's style,
Yeah.
for the Warhammer artist, Blanchitsu, I think they call it now, don't they?
Blanchitsu, yep. I
So,
am a shameless promoter and user of that hashtag
oh,
on,
okay, right.
making my posts.
Oh yeah, and I haven't gone there yet. I've seen some of his artwork, obviously, and I've seen some people that have painted in that style, and I just like that aesthetic. It's very grimy, grim dark,
Yeah.
bloody. It's visceral,
Yeah.
and I just like.
There's also lots of like really rich, warm colours as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Like really nice sepias and oranges and yellows and things.
yeah. Very abstract, isn't it? And
And definitely the flicking white paint just over the top of a model, which sounds very counterintuitive. That really, it can sort of look a bit like eating poo or something, like if it's like sort of dripping down on top of which again is very Turnip, but
yeah,
it kind of adds to that level of like visual noise that I
yeah.
think makes things look probably kind of hard to define branches to, but I think it's definitely like a noisy and
Mhm.
wheezy visual style. Very
Yeah.
clean.
I think if you was to look at it right close up, it would just be like color. But when you draw away, when you zoom out, you see actually the design that's there, and you think, there was a bit of thought gone into that, even though it
Oh
looks
yeah.
chaotic. So
Now there's
sorry.
a guy I follow on Instagram who regularly plays games with John Blanche.
Oh wow.
I can't remember his name. This is one of the problems, is just remembering usernames.
Yeah, of course.
Um, and it's every now and again in your news feed. You're sort of scrolling through
Hmm.
Instagram and there's just John Blanche sat at the dining room table playing Mordheim or something. And it's so wholesome and
Yeah,
lovely that he's
yeah.
out and about
He's
just playing games.
he's a hobby hero, isn't he? And yeah, but
Yeah.
like we tend to put people up on these pedestals, don't we? And they're
Oh
they're
yeah.
just they're just
Yeah.
guys that are really talented and love gaming or
Yeah.
painting or sculpting or whatever. Um, and yeah, rightly so. I mean, he is an incredible artist. He really is. So it's fine that people love and adore that
I would
style.
I would fanboy ridiculously if I think I ever even saw him in real life. I don't think I'd be brave against hello.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
I had no idea you were such a fan, but yeah, it's clear we have similar tastes, and yeah, I'd like to give that a go on the Knucklebone miniatures because I think that kind of lends itself a bit to that style.
So
Um,
which ones of his have you bought?
oh, I tell you what, I'm gonna get them out so you can
Ooh,
see.
get your toys out.
Yeah, get me
Let's have a look.
toys out. Oh, this is unscripted. This one, no script actually at all. But yeah, I will dig them out and find them. Is it in this book? Yeah.
Is it one of the ones with a big pointy hat?
You know that one, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, this little kitty here is still in the bag. But these are on my hobby to do. I had objectives for the year, and
Yep.
getting some Knucklebone miniatures painted, and actually I want to try oils. So,
Oh yeah, that's the one.
oh,
Yeah,
hang
yeah.
on.
He's the one with he's got like a vase on his back, hasn't he?
Yeah, isn't it odd? Yeah, and
Yeah, I
again,
love that one. Yeah, so good, so good.
beautiful miniatures. These were printed by like an approved printer from Colorado,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and he's using 8K printers, very high quality. So
Nice.
I'm looking forward to painting these. I've just got to wrap up a few of my projects. I'm a bit of a bugger for starting things and never finishing them. So
I think that's a nearly universal concern for for hobbyists.
I'm not alone. I tell you what, the guy, and I'm trying to think of his name. Bless him. What was his name? He sent me a load of the helmets,
Oh
stuff
yeah,
like that
excellent.
as
Yeah,
well.
all
So
the World War One stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
really cool.
oh dear, Joel. His name is Joel, and Happy Cheetah miniatures out in Colorado. That fat boy.
Oh yeah, nice one.
Yeah, I think I'd have some fun
Yeah.
with him.
Yeah.
Again, a gorgeous detail, and I think you know Matt's style of sculpting and his aesthetic. He plays with what the model cars. He takes
Yeah, he does.
Matchbox cars, doesn't he?
He does. He plays lands with Ramshackle Games,
That's it.
who is another lovely sculptor.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have any of his stuff. He does really nice resins.
Yeah. So
Like,
yeah,
tanks and upgrade kits and orky stuff and
yeah.
sort of again quite sort of a post-apocalyptic and junkyardy.
It's crazy, isn't it? So who on earth would come up with something like this?
Oh yes, no, the weird dinosaur bird riders. Yeah, yeah, they are. I've never seen one of those printed like full size. They're
So
brilliant.
yeah, looking forward to having a go at this fella as well. There's so much detail when you actually get him up close. You just think, he's yeah,
There's a lot
phenomenal,
going on.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
They've been very well cleaned up as well. There's nothing for me to do here. We was talking about 3D prints and how to support them and to make sure that how to put them on your plate so you actually get them off nicely, and that's a huge part of the skill of printing. That's probably the most important thing, isn't it? And I've received some stuff from some printers that have still got all the supports on, and some of them haven't been cured properly and stuff like that. So, that. Yeah, so they're just forever sticky. It's
it's grim. It's grim.
So, but that's just a minority of experience that I've had. But I'm looking forward to the day I actually have one, and that will probably be in the next year or so when we've got our own place. But yeah, so I'll have to bend your ear for some tips. I've had my eyes on Elegoo Mars because I've heard lots of things about it, but I guess by the time I'm viable, there'll be 8K printers at that sort of price soon, so...
I mean, probably, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that's rapidly maturing, so... yeah, price is always coming down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
Quality's always going up.
Yeah.
I can't fault mine at all. I love it. It's been good as gold.
Little sneak peek on TONKS there.
Oh.
So where are we at? Let's just regain composure and come back. So
we went on. We were talking about turnips.
It's fine. That's what happens, isn't it?
Went off on one.
It just addles your mind. The turnipery. Yeah. So Age of Sigmar. That was your gateway into the community again. But after a load of time off.
Hiatus.
Yep. And then Turnips just captured your imagination. It's your favourite game. But also I'm trying to think of the order. You've got a passion for tanks, a significant passion for tanks.
Yes.
I'm just skipping through here because there's this image here that I want to look at.
Yeah. So this was a lockdown project. So
Okay.
I've mentioned at the beginning, sort of growing up, lots of scale modelling, lots of military history, lots of trips to museums and stuff. I have always liked tanks. I think tanks are cool. And I had in my possession a second-hand White Dwarf from like 1991 or 1990. So we're talking like Rogue Trader era, not even second edition. And in it there were blueprints for like 3 or 4 orc tanks. So there's this one which is called a Gobsmasher, and then there was sort of some other ones which were like, they were big versions of the old epic orc tanks. So like some of them had sort of like towers, and some of them had, most of them had ridiculously large guns and ridiculously large tracks and everything. So we were in a national lockdown, sort of spring, summertime 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Supplies were running thin. There was not lots to do. But I could on Amazon order plasticard. So I ordered some plasticard, and I thought I'm gonna go back 30 odd years, and I'm gonna build this Gobsmasher. I also had some old school orcs.
Yes,
as well.
I recognise these helmets.
I love old school orcs. So These were very hard to find. These are storm boys who are
Mm-hmm.
like orcs who. There were like two types. There were some who worshipped corn, so you had like chaos orcs, and then you had storm boys who were like orcs who went orky and they liked being organised and they liked having proper uniforms and stuff and being very militaristic. Their Games Workshop did quite a short production run of these kind of slightly Germanic
Yeah, I was
looking
going to say the helmet.
stormtrooper
We all
orcs.
recognise it, don't we?
Yeah, so they've got this like coal scuttle helmet. The arms are plastic. They're the classic Rogue Trader orc arms. Um, I liked them. I thought they looked good. So they were a little lockdown project. So I did those. Did them yellow because I thought that was like a nice, bright, contrasting thing. And then I did this tank. So I was like, well, I need to do the tank yellow as well. There's also, if you go to the left-hand side, that orc, he's the type of orc that you got in the second edition starter set. So he's a little bit later. He's like 1992, 1993. And he's the one that I remember from when I was very, very young and I first encountered Warhammer. That was like the orc. That was, and you got like, I think you got 20 or 30 of them in the starter set. So, these things are prolific.
Yeah.
So I painted him up as well. I think there was also a bit of a painting competition at my local game store for like old orcs. So I think I painted him for that. So yeah, so then I bashed this polystyrene tank, and I had some old bits like Warbike knocking around. Commander, I think, is from an old metal orc dreadnought. The exhaust pipe, I think, are from a Forge World tank that I decided I was never going to finish, which probably seems like a incredibly expensive, wasteful way of obtaining spare parts. Just sacrificing a Forge World model just for some exhaust pipes.
Yeah, for viewers, Forge World are usually a premium product as well, aren't they?
Yeah, usually. So that's I've always had a bit of a thing for tanks, really.
Yeah, this is a remarkable tank, really. It really is, the details, the sense of humour in it again as well. I think orcs let us relax a little bit in the hobby. Orcs and goblins. Anything green skin really just helps breaks the grimness of the future full of war.
I think those orcs might be some of the last models I sort of painted normally, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Like they're not covered in mud. They don't have vegetables growing out of them. They've got a bit of highlighting and some shading, so they're sort of fairly normal looking.
Yeah.
Which is quite nice, really, because I think some people would think I've never painted a normal model. I've only painted like mud-caked monstrosities.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because orcs do have a special relationship with mushrooms, don't they? So you don't often see that expressed either, do you?
Yes,
Mushroom 28 could be a thing. You never know.
A lot of people in Turnip do mushrooms and things, like growing out of their models, or oyster mushrooms, because oyster mushrooms are very easy to sculpt. You just need like a little disc of green stuff, and then you like cut a flat side and just stick them onto any flat surface.
Yep. They're perpendicular, growing out of stuff, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's lots of shrooms in Turnip. Yeah.
Okay, so your passion for tanks is and modelling. I've put this one in there because I put that on the montage picture, and this was something that caught my eye because it's a little bit different. It still looks like you're going a bit turnipy on this.
This is like a turnip project, and I can explain what was going on here as well. So previously, that Max for Turnip organised a kit bash competition for that horse pub thing I made. The second competition was all about tanks, so I naturally was very excited about that. Max is currently working on a new game called Swill, which is going to be like a more of a skirmish game. So you have like a squad of characters, and it's in a much more industrial setting. So Turnip is all sort of muddy field cottages and vegetables out in the countryside. This is a lot more to do with industry. So there's lots of oil and cogs and machinery and rusty metal and dripping stuff, and it's all gross and very turnipy still. It sort of exists in the same world. And as part of your squad of characters, you have a small tank. So there was a competition to build lots of tanks, and Max published some rules for different flavors of tank that you can use in your game. So there's like your normal turnip tank. There's a turnip tank that fires, flame canisters. There's a flying tank. There's a tank that grinds people up with big mincer things. There's all these different turnip sort of flavors of tank, and that just set me off. Like that was it. It's I love tanks. I love Turnip 28. It's now converging into this one place. So I made like 5 tanks, I think. This isn't the one I entered in the competition. This is my like flying tank. So base model is a what are they called? Meng, the model manufacturer. They make a range of like cartoon tanks, which are very cute. But as part of that range, they also do a cartoon U-boat.
Yeah, right.
So I thought, because it's sort of industrial and sort of mechanized and a little bit steampunk, because it's kind of more damp and rusty. I don't know what we probably need a new word for that sort of aesthetic. I thought a flying U-boat would be fun. So
yeah, totally has to be done.
I got this. I 3D printed the sea mines. That was an STL I got on the internet. So again, that was a perfect use case of 3D printing. I want a 28mm scale sea mine, and I can't buy one in a shop.
Of course not. No.
I can download and print the ones I need, and I don't need to buy. I don't know, like a mine layer model kit just to snip out just the sea mines and then chuck the rest of it. I can just target the bit I need and print it. So
perfect.
I printed off some sea mines. I got some jewelry chain off the internet, which is what all that is, and it's sort of caked in super glue. I got some bamboo sort of barbecue skewers because I thought you'd need some like anti-personnel spikes on the underside of your boat should anyone try and attack your boat, which is flying. And that was primarily because I thought it helped with the silhouette. Like when I'm doing my kit bashes, I quite often like stop and sort of take a sort of squinty look from a long way away to see what the sort of silhouette's looking like, or leave it on one side of a room and walk away and look at it from a long way away to see if it kind of looks right. So I thought the spikes would help with the silhouette. And obviously it's a tank, so it needs to have a turret. So I took off the like traditional U-boat conning tower where the periscope is and everything. I took that off, and that is.
It's a lid of something, isn't it?
It's a deodorant or aerosol lid of some kind, maybe a nose spray or something. I don't know, and put some rivets around it. I think the exhaust pipe is from a different tank kit. And the gun that's from a tank kit. I turned it sideways, so it's sort of more in line with the turret. The hatch, I think, was off another tank.
Brilliant.
And this was the first model where I used my airbrush. That was about a year and a half ago. Like, I'm going to get either a 3D printer or I'm going to get an airbrush. I can't possibly do both. That would be terrible. And they're both very fickle things with quite a steep learning curve. So I decided to double down on the 3D printer. But then last birthday, completely as a surprise, my dad got me an airbrush, which was really lovely of him.
Brilliant.
And he's got some friends who do scale modelling and stuff, so he got a few good recommendations and got me really nice.
So it's in the blood, Ben. It's definitely in the blood.
Yeah, no, it's entirely his fault, really. He took me to Bottled Tank Museum as a child far too many times, and that set me on a trajectory to where I am now.
Wonderful. What does he think of the turnip aesthetic?
Oh, I don't think he likes it. I think he thinks it's too weird. I think he thinks it's too weird. But anyway, so camo stripes. This was like my first very amateurish. I can make paint come out of this machine. I'm now going to try and like just do vertical stripes over this model that I've lovingly kit bashed. It came out all right. And
Yeah,
then
it did. Yeah.
I attacked it with some transfers. Transfers like they're one of my favourite things at the moment, because they just make models more interesting.
Was it you posted that site up on there that you can actually get custom transfers made? Was that yourself who posted that, or someone? I saw.
So I reached out to a guy on Instagram called Dan Streeting. He does like custom transfers with a home inkjet printer. I've not seen any
Right.
like services where you can get.
Yeah, I can't remember whether it was. It might have been a post then where I don't know. I definitely saw somewhere where.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
I've been dabbling more and more with transfers lately, and the big game changer was Microsol and Microset, which they're like little magic bottles of another strange smelling chemical that's probably bad for you, makes hobby, and they basically you use them instead of water for water slide transfers, and they just they like dissolve the backing material much better than water. So you can put a transfer on something that's quite like wibbly wobbly with lots of texture, and it will come through. So
I was going to say you can't tell that's a transfer. You can't see.
Yeah, it kind of feels like magic when you're doing it, because it does look really good. Like I've done some scale models in the past couple of years with like cast iron texture on them, which I've made with like an acrylic putty. You stab it on with a bristle brush and you get like a nice cast metal effect, or something like this where I've got loads of like chips and typhus corrosion and mud and stuff. And it makes the transfers so malleable that they stick to every single like nook and cranny.
Yeah.
So that's another like big hobby recommend is
Your dad will appreciate that one, I bet, because usually with transfers, especially Airfix kits and stuff like that, you can just see a little bubble or something underneath it, can't you?
Get
Lift
that kind
it up.
of silvery kind of air pocket. But this completely gets rid of that as well.
Oh.
The other thing is like a matte acrylic medium. I always do that over the top afterwards, which just helps seal it all in. But it does help a little bit with that optical. Like kind of edge. You always get an edge because this thing is physically a three-dimensional object.
Of course, yeah.
Resting on top of another three-dimensional object. But if you just put some translucent acrylic medium over the whole thing, that helps as well.
Brings it all in.
What I did here. And it just I'm a bit of a sucker for transfers and decals.
Yeah, well,
most of my models at the moment have got at least a few dotted all over them.
Let's have a look at some of them.
They just add like a pop of colour.
They do.
Yeah, there's a a nice tonk. So that is a Flames of War 1/100th scale T-34-85, which is a Russian tank from World War II.
So 1/100th then, what sort of size is this in your...
Like 15 mils, so a person is like about 15 mil tall-ish. So that tank is about this big-ish.
It's a bit weird on there, isn't it?
So I was sort of going back.
And I like the griminess as well. You've got the grime on here, weathering, oils, I guess, or enamels. Yeah,
it's all really easy. So ended up did the transfers. It all looked very nice and tidy. Got a tiny little bit of sponge. Dabbed it in some Rhinox hide, which is a nice Games Workshop colour, which is like a really dark, rich, warm brown, which is great for chipping. You might well call it chip paint. It's a real nice colour. And like similar to dry brushing, you want to sort of wipe off most of the paint and then if you just really lightly dab it on the corners, you get a really nice chaotic like chipping effect.
Yeah.
So it looks like sort of scratches and everything, which is quite nice.
It's very good.
And because it's only a 15 mil tank, you don't really need to do much more than that. If it was a big tank, you might want to think about picking out some edges. You want to think about some dry brushing.
Yeah. Very effective, isn't it? Look at that.
Just so quick and easy.
Yeah.
You know, and if you make sure you get some going over the transfers, that can like help the transfers tie in a bit with the model underneath, and then you hit it with the enamels. So I use interactive streaking grime, and I also use they do like a dark brown one. Streaking grime is a bit green and a bit gooey. They also do like just a nice sort of brown. So cover the model in that. Leave it about half an hour.
So
and then
how are you applying it, Ben? Are you applying it with a brush or
just brushing it on?
Yeah.
Just brushing it on. You can airbrush it, but I've never needed to do that. Yeah, and then just slap it on. And to get sort of on the side of the hull, you can see there's like sort of water streaks where it's like going in lines a little bit.
Yep.
When you get your white spirit to wipe off, it's like an additive and subtractive process. You put on all this streaking grime, it's much runnier than acrylic paint, so it goes into all the nooks and crannies. It goes much deeper. It's got a much higher like amount of pigment in it compared to acrylic paint. But it's not water soluble, so you have to use white spirits.
Okay.
If you get a flat brush, damp it in the white spirits, and then when you sort of do vertical motions to wipe the side of your tank, because your brush is never like a perfect edge, it's got sort of gaps, it creates that kind of streaking effect. And because it's not water-based, when you put the white spirits on, you get much better gradients with it as well. So it's one of those things of, I'm really happy with this model when it's done, but I know that it was very easy to do.
Well, that's the purpose of this channel. It really is, you know, because I look at that and I think, blimey, that's phenomenal. You've just sort of debunked the whole process for us, haven't you? Really, you've just broken it all down, and so yeah, be encouraged, really, isn't it? That's the thing. Have a go.
No, I said earlier, it's sort of weathering is seen as like a bit sort of extra and a bit seen as like a bit high end or a bit technically demanding, but really it's quite nice and quick to do.
Yeah, and it does add so much to it as well, doesn't it? There's a lot on this one, isn't there, as well?
Yeah, there's a lot of. I did a fair amount of streaks on that one because it's got lots of rivets. So these are my tanks.
Yes, they are.
So
yeah, we just had a look. I'm a bit scruffy with my slides, aren't I? But here we go. We've got the.
Yeah. So this is one of my silly tanks. So earlier this year, after Christmas, I sort of had a bit of a quieter period at work. I had a little bit more sort of free time. I can use 3D modeling software, so this is done in Blender, which originally I did learn to use for work. And I just thought I'd like to make some little tanks because I thought that'd be fun. So I made 3 little tanks. So they're all they're meant to be kind of a little bit cartoony, but kind of inspired by different historical tanks. This one is meant to look particularly German, as like a World War II tank. So German tanks in World War II obviously very heavily armoured. They had this kind of interleaving, very complicated to produce and weld way of like having the armor slabs sort of interlock with each other, and that's how they'd weld them together. And then for the fun, I thought, what if the whole top of the tank was the turret?
Yeah.
So that whole top bit moves around. So it looks a bit like a tank destroyer, but it does have sort of rotating turrets. That was sort of one of the little tanks I made. It was actually the last one I made.
Which one?
The 2 before it were. So yeah, you can see at the back there with the little turret rotating. So I kind of painted it in sort of slightly German in colours. The first one I did is the green one in the foreground there. The one was kind of inspired by like the Valentine tank, which is just like a nice British tank with a sort of round turret and nice exposed running gear. It's just like a kind of iconic, simple tank. And I made the hull sort of looking sort of more mass at the front, so it sort of looks like it's kind of going somewhere in a hurry, sort of slightly cartoony. And covered it in rivets, because rivets make things look better when you paint them. You get streaks and you get some shadow and it breaks up big surfaces. So that was the first one I did.
Sort of Churchill-esque, because it's a little bit Churchill-y, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. It's kind of got sort of big
trapezoid sort of.
Yeah. You've got big slab of hull in the middle, and that's kind of where I.
So
I've done 3D modeling before, but this was like I wouldn't have known where to start, like doing tracks, or something curvy before, and this is where I kind of learnt how to sculpt digitally some of those elements.
So these turrets and the base of the tank, are they separate items that you just put on top so you can turn it? Yeah.
So all the turrets spin around. This one, hull and tracks, is all just one thing.
Yeah.
Quite thin, so it kind of just is easier to do that way. The German tank and the French tank, the tracks are separate to the hull, so they're kind of in 4 pieces as like turret, hull, tracks on the side.
There's quite a lot of thought goes into these, isn't there?
So I did the whole kind of like I do a lot of drawing. Just most days I do a doodle of something, and when I was sort of thinking about what would sort of an archetypal tank look like, so you can see it's like that image. I was rambling a bit there, but I import my drawings into Blender to draw against in digital. So
I can see it. Yeah.
You put your photo behind your model, and then
brilliant.
Sort of sculpt in real time, which is really, really useful in terms of like proportioning. When I was at school and university, they always said you must never like design in a digital medium. You should try and draw something or make a maquette or a little test model or something first before going into a computer. So I always doodle and then put the image in Blender. This is it's not quite finished yet. I have printed one of them, and it still needs some work. So all of those tanks that I designed previously, they're like itty bitty 15 mil. This is an actual 28mm scale, a bigger tank. And the original idea was obviously. Fan of orcs, big fan of old school orcs. I found in my bitbox the iconic orc war tracks. So the little two wheels and some sprockets in the middle track from an orc half track.
Have I got an image of that?
So that's the one I think it was
before.
There you go.
Oh, sorry. Where am I? This.
So that
down
component
here.
I'm holding in the bottom right. That was that's like an iconic bit of GW, which regularly surfaces. So I thought you can't get those anymore. They don't make them. So I thought it'd be prudent to make my own digital copy. I don't think anyone's going to be offended by me.
No IP strikes.
Because it's 30 years old.
Commercially available anymore, anyway, is it? So.
I did consciously change like the number of rivets and stuff, so it isn't actually exactly the same. And then I thought, okay, so if I make a digital copy of that track, what could I then kitbash with it? So in the end, I opted for this 3-turreted sort of tower tank, which I thought that'd be fun.
Yeah,
it's a bit of Studio Ghibli.
Yes,
a little bit cartoony.
The obvious question, Ben, is: are these turrets going to be independent of each other?
They are independently rotating.
Yes.
They are independently rotating. I'm just thinking, shall I go and get my test?
Absolutely, this is it. Yeah, go for it, mate.
You get your toys out. I'm going to get my toys out. I'll be back in a second.
Brilliant. Oh dear, so good. Yep.
Sorry about that little interlude.
No, not at all.
So
It's brilliant.
here's how well this will show up. Here's the top turret.
It's a good size.
Like a little polar. Open the hatch. So I'm gonna have a little commander. And then
I tell you what, let me do. I'm going to put you on guest only because then I forgot.
okay.
I forgot I had this.
Okay.
Oh, internet's let me
Here's a
down with
little
pixelation. But,
turret.
yeah.
Then there are the two subsequent turrets underneath.
Brilliant.
And I wanted to make them look a bit more modern, so I've covered them in little explosive reactive armor boxes.
I wonder. I was going to ask you whether that was. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of modern tanks, especially sort of tanks you see in the news these days. In Central Europe, they have lots of ERA on them. Now, as I went over to go and get my tank, I remembered I have actually started doing something with this tank, which is the paint pot challenge.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Which,
Is it Morose Miniatures running it?
Morose Miniatures. Last year was the first one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fantastic idea. The idea being you kit bash something with a real pot of paint,
Yep.
either in a diorama or a model or part of a bigger kit bash. So I made this test print, which had a lot of issues with it. Then I thought, because it's such a long, tall tank anyway, I would use it as my sort of basis for the paint pot challenge.
Brilliant.
You can see my there's my copy of the ore track bit.
Yeah.
I've made like a little hole for the tank, and then I've superglued an empty pot of Nuln oil on top of it. And the idea is I'm going to then somehow put all of this on top. So you're going to have this ridiculously heavy
Brilliant.
tower tank with like multiple turrets, but then there's this empty pot of paint in the middle that I'm not going to paint. So it's going to be like painted tank, empty pot, painted turrets. That's the idea anyway.
Yeah, that's going to work.
It should be fun.
That will be very good.
Although there's not much time. It's only a month long.
I know.
And it's, we're getting into May now.
Yeah.
I have to pull my finger out with that one. And,
yeah, I've seen a few entries already. Not official entries, but like work in progresses.
Have you seen the Mario Brothers?
Yeah, brilliant.
That was very good. That was very good.
What's he called them? Is he called them Marius Brothers, isn't he, or something like that?
I think so. Yeah, I can't remember the person's count, but yeah, there's going to be some gold this year.
Is it not? Is it not on Morose's? Was it not him, the creator? I think so. I think it was his.
Having a quick look now. Let's have a look.
As like an inspiration, maybe.
Yeah, no, it was. It was him. Yeah. I mean, it's Mario and Luigi as paint pots. It's
very well done. Very well done.
Fantastic. They've got dungarees and moustaches. It's just wonderful.
He's got the style, with the letters as well. He's presented that very well, hasn't he?
The typography and everything is spot on. Yeah.
Yeah. I only just discovered his account recently, and I saw it, and it's a bit like the Smash Bash, the competition on there. I saw all the entries, the whips and stuff like that, and thought I'm going to enter. So yeah, Helmut the Crab was born.
Yes.
I didn't really leave enough time,
I liked Helmut the Crab. I thought he was good. I think Deathcore of Krieg, Servitor mutant crab thing.
I wrote a little bit of blurb to sort of explain how he came about as well. So it's very grim, dark. Yeah.
Check that. But, I mean, the Deathcore of Krieg are about as grim as it gets.
Yeah. I might jolly him up some. He's very grim, but then the competition was like a grim, dark homage, wasn't it? But I might brighten him up.
Brackish Birth was that?
Yes. Yeah.
I've seen lots of swampy things, and lots of sea monsters and swamp monsters and
I'm
that kind of stuff.
really inspired by the community's response to competitions like that, because the amount of time some people are spending on, and I guess Smash Bash was known about for a long time, so they've been working
Yeah,
on it. But I don't know when they give you the scope though for the competition, because it's like Morose Miniatures. He only just give us the scope for it, and change the rules slightly or whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, the standard of like kit bashing for that Smash Bash is phenomenal.
I mean,
Is
I think competitions are. I think part of the reason they're so popular, the community has got this like bubbling creative energy, and it's almost like games and the rule systems give us a way to harness and direct all of that. Because otherwise, we'd all just like be flailing around, not
yeah,
having any direction. Um, one of my other friends is Owl Shield. Pete. He's the creator of Necropolis 28.
yeah, right, okay, yep,
Um, which is the undead skirmish game on the beautiful little 16 by 16 um, uh, sort of diorama sized boards. He did a competition, and it's great for like raising the profile of a game or making sure creatives are getting like, some exposure on the platform.
yeah,
But I think it's again from like a design background. If you need rules, right? Because the restraint is creativity. If you can just do whatever you want, then you'll probably just do something easy. But if it's like, okay, you need to do this, but you have to use a paint pot, or it needs to have a skeleton, or it needs to, it's those restrictions I think are what make it interesting and exciting.
totally. You want
So
to
I'm
see how
I'm
people,
a big fan of competitions
yeah,
on Instagram models because I think it produces amazing stuff.
it's that interpretation of them, isn't it? They just lends to their creativity and stuff. Right,
Yeah,
and talking
definitely.
about creativity, we have now really got to pay some attention to your games design. And
Ooh,
we've
ooh,
spoken about your passion for tanks. So
yeah,
there's one before we go into Tonks, which is a club banger at the moment. Tanks, it really is. So let me as a little teaser. I'll just put this up. So where am I? I've got to get my. Here we go. So there's a little teaser.
yeah.
A multiplayer
Um,
tank to tank kerfuffles.
yeah,
Brilliant. Let's go and have a look see at your first game, I believe. Fishing
yes,
28.
fishing. Yeah.
So
So yeah, there's a bit of a background to this. So a couple of years ago, for Hydra, really nice guy called Simon on Instagram made a game called Apple Picking 28 because he wanted a non-violent, non-horrible war game to play with his young family. And so he could, explain like to his kids, what does Daddy go and do for fun? Well, he goes and rolls dice and moves toy soldiers around. And he made this really lovely, wholesome game where basically you walk through an orchard and you try and get more apples than the other person. And there's a few variations. I think there's like some chickens get involved or something, or I think someone might come and try and steal some of your apples. It's so there's more to it than just going and getting apples. But he did a really lovely job on the rulebook document itself. He did some really lovely kit bashes and some really nice photography, and it did spawn a few people doing their own sort of apple picking. So naturally, someone immediately went 41st millennium. I'm like a skull servitor cyborg thing going around collecting toxic apples from some toxic apple orchard factory thing, and it was all gothic. And it was just really lovely, and it kind of did this sort of non-combat tabletop genre. Um, you then fast forward to sort of beginning of this year, end of last year, and
yeah,
Mangling Minis, who is one of my close hobby buddies, made Herding 28, which was in a very similar kind of agricultural vein. So the idea is you have a herd of of cattle, and you're basically controlling like a sort of sheepdog, and you need to try and steer the herd from one area into a pen. And again, he did a wonderful job with the rule book, loads of interesting graphics, he did loads of interesting scenarios. He's recently sort of updated it with like bizarre mutations that your cattle can get. So it's still a sort of non-combat game, but there's a bit more peril and a bit more weirdness.
Some turnipery.
So yeah, exactly. And lots of opportunity for making weird mutant pigs or weird mutant sheeps, and it was sort of a little bit Turnip 28 flavored because of this sort of agricultural, muddy, rural aesthetic, but not actual combat, just farming. So then we were talking about this in the group chat one day, and I sort of postulated what other forms of agriculture or harvesting could you possibly turn into a non-combat tabletop game. I was sat up here in my hobby room, and I've got some like 2x2 MDF squares that I use to make my boards for when I am playing games. I just took one of those, and in about sort of, I don't know, the initial like idea was probably in a matter of minutes. Was like, okay, well, let's say you've got some fish and this is all water and you're in a boat, and every turn the fish move around a bit, so it's awkward and you have to try and like steer your ship into the fish, but oh no, the wind's blowing your ship. And there you go, you've got a ridiculously simple game that I can fit into a like 5-page post on Instagram. So I kind of that was the creative process. I didn't make a model boat, and I didn't make any model fish. So I am a complete fraud. I was using winks and coins and dice and just moving things around. I've for a long time I've been a fairly frustrated game designer. I've had ideas I've wanted to make games for. So there are a couple of posts way back on my Instagram that don't really make much sense because they're sort of just me spitballing like ideas for some sci-fi skirmish games and that kind of thing, which I didn't really get anywhere with. But this seemed, small and self-contained and fairly easy to do, and it, like I said, sort of beginning of the year, I had a little bit more free time, so I just went for it. I can do a bit of Photoshop, a little bit, and I enjoy dabbling a bit with, controversially, AI art.
Gosh.
I know.
Oh, we need to end the conversation right now, I think.
Oh,
Aren't you? You've
terrible,
gone into some
terrible.
dodgy waters.
It's contentious. Yeah. So I managed to cobble together a rule book for this game in like a day, pretty much. There were quite a few typos that had to go back and be fixed later. Yeah, so I put this little post up on my Instagram. It was all black and white and moody and gross, with lots of these bizarre gothic looking fish, and little rules for going out and going fishing. There's a table for like things that make the game more complicated, make it harder to go fishing. And people liked it and started building boats and fish, and then started tagging me in things, and it was all lovely. It was really, really nice.
Yeah, there has been numerous, people get involved with this, haven't they? They've really taken a shine to it and created their
which
own.
makes me feel terrible because I've still not actually built a model boat for my own for my own game. So this is one of 4 Hydras. So this is Mr.
I love this one here. This is phenomenal. Big
they're
bulgy
just,
eyes.
They're just so good. They're just so good. They're so good. And I think one of his children was like, "Oh, I want a mushroom man for my boat." So he made different fishing men for different boats. And people have sent me photos of like whole families playing Fishing 28 at the same time, and I'm like, "Oh, it's lovely."
That's beautiful, isn't it?
And it's it's mad. So people have been making boats, and people have been making fish, and people have been going fishing.
So
And it's,
the
yeah,
game has a peril element in it with
there's
the
there's a
monster.
big bad fish. Yep,
Yeah,
there is.
I'm taking.
There's a couple of
He
instances
looks
of
like that
peril.
might be
Like
him, mightn't it?
your boat hits some rocks, you can like lose all your fish, which is
Mhm.
bad. Um, there is one of the things that can make things complicated is the the big scary fish can arrive, which is definitely
Mhm.
that chap there with the big teeth. So yeah, there's it's not it's still non-combat, but there is sort of risk
Some
and sort of needing
drama.
to try and sort of you have to hurry
Mhm.
sometimes because things are happening.
I
You
love
can
the
get wind.
detail.
I mean, his barnacles are great. I had some barnacles on my flying submarine, but they're not as good as those barnacles. Those are really good.
Yeah, he's got.
You can see like the sort of striations on the side and
Yeah,
everything. They're great.
yeah, he's a
Um,
very good miniature man, isn't he? I mean, his
his
painting
stuff's
style,
phenomenal.
but he's
Yeah,
doing a lot of
absolutely.
kit bashing, and he's
Yep, yep, yep.
casting his own minis. I see one of his posts a couple of weeks back where he's casting his own sculpts for
So
a charity.
he's casted up a set of the fish
Yes, as
as
well.
well,
Yes, yeah.
which is I've got some of these fish which I am going to paint because
You're gonna have to, aren't you?
I've got to.
Yeah.
You can't make up a game and people start people start
Well,
making fish for it
I think you
without
could be
doing your own fish.
excused because
No.
your tonkery is you
My my Tom Tonkery, yes.
yeah, you really pushed things to the next limit. So obviously the reception that you've got for from Fishing 28, and I guess 28 is reference to the size, the scale, is it? Yeah, that's Turnip
Yeah.
28 and everything. The aesthetic. I'm not gonna go through. Deliberately didn't want to go through the rule book because, I'm gonna say to the viewers, if you haven't already, then get yourself over to Ben's profile and do yourself a favour and look at this because, and yeah, we touched on AI. It is a hot topic. It is contentious. Some people are very upset about AI, full stop. And fair enough, they're entitled to their opinion. But it, I don't think they fully grasp that there's still a huge creative element involved with AI art. They just think that you type something in and that's it, it spits it out, and there you go. There's way more to it than that. I've had a little play with Midjourney, and yeah, you type something in and you get a lot of shite out of it, don't you? Do you?
You
You
can,
really do.
you can
It
get quite mixed results if I'm being
yes.
diplomatic. Yeah,
So what you
yeah.
type in is very important, and that's where the creative element comes through. And I can see that throughout your rule book that you have thought very carefully about the images that you want, and they are phenomenal. What's come out
And
is.
I edit all of them in Photoshop as well.
Hmm.
They're all chopped around and tweaked and stretched and textures filled in, and you quite often get sort of bizarre little artifacts with
Yeah.
AI generated images. So
Hmm.
I really I understand the controversy and I understand the concern and I understand some of the intellectual property concerns people have
Hmm.
because this server robot basically just goes out on the internet and borrows things. But really, that's no different to what an illustrator would do anyway. People gather source work. You have mood boards. You
Hmm.
have you gather inspirational things for when you're making something new. You don't create things in a vacuum. So
Yeah.
I'm fairly comfortable using it. I'm using it for freebies. I'm not profiting off it. These are free to download things.
Hmm.
Like I said, I edit them anyway and I change them. I just think it's
Yeah.
just another tool.
Hmm.
I could say, I could pay an illustrator and say, "Hi, I want you to make me a black and white pen and ink logo with, a space underneath for some words, with a fish with a fishing rod and lots of splashes and drips, and make it try and look a bit like a tattoo or something, quite stark contrast." Um, and that's no, you know, yeah. I understand it's a very contentious topic.
it
Um,
it's too late anyway, isn't it? The cat is out of the bag. You know,
yeah,
it's I think, my point of view. Initially, I saw the AI with the strike through it, anti AI
yeah,
campaign that
yeah.
was on Instagram last year, and I felt aggrieved because I was like, I hadn't really thought it through. But the trouble is, it's already here. Whether you agree with it or not, it is
Yeah.
not going away. It's only going to increase. It's just trying to work out, like how disruptive was Netflix. How disruptive was,
Yeah.
what was the first stream and music streaming platform that came out?
Oh,
Like,
like that film with Justin Timberlake as the guy.
yeah, I can't remember what it's
Oh,
called now. And
what's
sorry
his
to
name?
do that to you, Ben.
No, 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 it's okay. No, I know the one you mean. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
so there's always disruptive industries, inventions and stuff like that, and they said it was going to be the death of record and the death of music, and and the death of movies and stuff like that. Actually, it's completely opposite is true. So I think it's just about how to embrace it, and
Like,
yeah.
it's not stopping me from drawing stuff. Like I didn't use it for when I drew up my tanks. This was partly to do with speed because I wanted to just quickly
Hmm.
cobble together this
Yeah.
kind of rule book thing. And like I said, the whole kind of thing took sort of a day-ish really to do. And I couldn't have done that either commissioning an illustrator or doing it myself.
No.
Um, so yeah, it's
I think we just on that point. So we got another disruption was 3D printing,
yes, yeah,
and you can
yeah,
you can choose to buy Games Workshop stuff, or you can choose to buy s- some similar
yes, yes.
stuff,
Legally distinct but similar. Yes,
3D printed stuff. Just like you can choose to buy white metal products because you like the
absolutely.
way white metal looks rather than plastic. I don't think that I'm going to put myself out. I don't really know, do I? I haven't got the data, but I'm going to suggest that white metal is still very popular, and that people are doing very well with traditional
Absolutely.
sculpting
I
still.
mean,
So,
I went to Salute a couple of weeks ago. You know, there were a lot of white metal models still. There's a lot more 3D printed models than there used to be,
hmm,
but they are brittle and they snap.
yep,
You know, if you drop an English Civil War pikeman that's 3D printed, that's going to be in like 8 pieces by the time
that's
you manage to
it's
scoop it
Turnip
all up.
kitbash later on. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's fodder for the spare parts pile. Whereas a white metal model, um, is a lot more durable. So
yeah.
yeah, I try not to get
Mm.
sucked into the kind of whole AI thing. I do think from a sort of society perspective, we do need to be prepared for the changes it's going to bring,
Yeah,
because there are going to be different jobs in the future.
hmm,
Um,
yeah, I
we need
agree.
to be prepared for. But anyway,
I
but
agree.
yeah, in this use case, it was just a nice quick way to
Hmm.
get base images together for um, you know,
And
a rule book about a fishing game.
yeah, and I think there's no denying your creative mind, your design background, and stuff like that. So it's all born from your imagination, and it's phenomenal. So if you haven't seen it, viewers, get yourself over to Apocrypha Now on Instagram and check out his profile. You won't be disappointed at all. And obviously the reception that you got from Fishing 28, I think, I don't know, maybe encouraged you to go into the
Definitely, definitely,
TONKS,
yeah,
which there's some. Oh, I've just skipped across there. There's a couple of Mid-Journey
yeah. So
AI.
these are, I think the prompts were things like, mutants World War One soldier with a yellow background, or scary World War One gas mask figure, with mustard gas cloud in the background, and patently that is not a correct image. There is, there are mistakes there, but it doesn't mean it doesn't look bloody cool. Like,
Yes.
how grimdark is that?
Yeah, exactly.
As a kind of inspiration piece, that's
Hmm.
terrifying, really
Yes, it,
weird
it
and
absolutely is.
cool.
So let's
And it's yellow as well because I've got a bit of a thing with yellow. I
you
don't know
have
if it comes
I
through. I've just
def
occasionally I like painting things yellow.
definitely noticed that. Yeah. So
So
Tonks then.
Tonks.
Yeah.
So Tonks started out. I think it was the Hobby Dungeon account on Instagram. Is organising a one-page game jam. So the idea is
Yes, I've
some
heard of
people
this. Yep.
are making one-page games. The games you can, all the rules fit on one like letter or A4 side, and they're going to turn it into a book, and it's going to be lovely. So by this point, I'd designed, printed, and painted a little set of tanks. So I thought, oh, I did fishing quickly. Maybe I could like try and make a tank game that fits on one page. So I did got the board out, got the tanks out, started rolling dice and thinking about game mechanics and how things move around and shoot each other. And before I knew it, I had something that was definitely more than one page long. And I started when I did Fishing 28. I like went straight into Photoshop and started writing the rules in Photoshop to get the layout and stuff. And that was great creatively, but terrible in terms of like proofreading and correcting mistakes because I had like 8 different files and it was horrible. So I started writing rules for Tonks in a Word document, and it sort of went a lot better. And very quickly I realised it was kind of fun. Like I think I'd made a thing. I'd made a thing that I liked and I was happy with. And I shared the sort of initial text version with some of my close hobby buddies, and they didn't sort of walk and say it was terrible. So then I started putting together another kind of freebie set of rules, which became Tonks. It had a few different names. It was going to be Tonk. It was going to be Tonks 28. It was going to be Tonks, but then because I was using my little tanks, and I also painted up. It's better with more players you have. It sort of gets more chaotic and weird. So I had some Flames of War tanks, and here we go. So that's a Panzer IV painted up incorrectly. So that is not historical. And I just
It's
kind of went.
hysterical.
It's hysterical, not historical. Yeah. So I started painting up little 15mm tanks, and put together my rule book for Tonks, which have been really knocked out by how people have responded to that, because I make a point of like, if anyone does a post of Tonks and they hashtag Tonks the game, and Apocrypha Now's made a thing called Tonks, I always share it on my story and then I save it to one of my highlights so I can go back and find it. And I think there's like an upper limit to how many things you can get in a highlight, so I might have to like have a second highlight
Oh
for
right, really?
all the Tonk stuff I've been sharing.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's been really
And,
fun.
and
Really,
you've
really
made
fun.
your files, your tanks freely available as well. Your designs for the 3D
Yep. So
prints.
the 3D print files, they are on Wargames Vault, and they are pay what you like. So you can download them for free, no problem at all. Some people choose to leave a little
Yeah.
contribution,
hmm
which is nice, but not essential at all. I'd much rather just people downloaded and printed Tonks to play Tonks.
I'll add the links, your
Oh, that'd be
links,
lovely.
your handles and stuff like that, and your link to this in the description, Ben,
Yeah.
so people can
Yeah.
get hold of it.
I've got a Linktree as well, which has got everything.
Ah,
So that's probably, that might be a better one stop. If you just want one link,
yeah, cool.
that
Yep,
one might help.
perfect.
So yeah, so Tonks is you have a little tank and you drive around and you blow up the other tanks, and it's fun. Um,
But
I don't want to overcomplicate it.
no. But
It's
the
simple.
reception for me, this is like the same people that are kit bashing for Turnip 28 and stuff like that are obviously some people that are being influenced by Tonks, and they are flexing on their kit bashery,
Yeah,
and they're
it's
designing all
there's
these weird, wonderful tanks again, aren't they? So
I think it kind of there was a lot of tank kit bashing last year with like Swill and everything, and I think for a lot of wargamers, tanks are quite a rare thing, you know. So like if you're doing a Warhammer army, you might have like a tank or a couple of tanks, which is like a big separate project on its own. And normally you're painting up, you know, dozens and dozens of little infantry characters and that kind of thing. Or if you're doing historical wargaming, you know, you might have a couple of tanks and lots of infantry. By swapping that around and you just have a tank, I think it makes the kind of, it's a bit like a palette cleanser. It's like, yeah, I'm going to do a tank, and then it's a one-off thing. You just have your little tank. You don't need to worry about a squad of tanks or you know, nothing to go with it. It's just it's a fairly low bar of entry to just cobble together some tanks. You know,
It's a good point,
eBay
actually.
is, you know, Amazon and eBay are full of small tank toys. I've seen people using like wind back kids like toys, you know, the ones you like wind back on the floor and then they come along, like little tank versions of those. People have been using lots of Flames of War because again it's like nice and small. So although you know, a Flames of War squadron of tanks might be quite a big investment, but people on eBay split them up so you can just buy like a sprue. So it's quite light. And I used a fairly I would say acidic color palette, so sort of fluorescent pink, fluorescent green, fluorescent yellow in the rule book. I used lots of images that were based on my 3D files for the tanks. And then the bits of it have got a kind of sort of graffiti or, you know, spray paint aesthetic. So I started making little transfers as well. This particular tank has a selfie of my face on the other side.
Oh,
So,
I
so
haven't got that
my,
image, have I?
my face on a tank, which was again just really fun to do. And I've had messages from people in America, people in mainland Europe. Again, because it's a fairly simple, not complicated game. People have been playing it with family members or who aren't normally war gamers. Also, massive shout out to Narcoleptic Wizard, who is a hobby hero of mine. I had so it was Salute is the UK's big like war game. It's our version of Adepticon. It's a big deal every year. Like a few days or a week or so before Adepticon, Jack reached out to me and was like, "Oh, you know, hey Ben, hope you're keeping well. I've got the opportunity to run a demo table for Salute. Do you mind if I do Tonks?" And I was like,
Let me think.
"Oh, go on then." So Jack bravely and heroically played Tonks for like 8 hours on the demo table at Salute, which was just incredible. He printed out some little Rot tanks, so Gretchen scale tanks. So they're the same size as a normal 15mm tank, but they're scaled for 28mm, so they're kind of a little bit in between. And they're beautiful. And he just ran Tonks all day, and I went with some friends, and we, you know, straight away went to go and see Jack, and I had printed out some flyers for him so he could tell people where to go and get the rules and stuff. And we played a massive sort of, I think, 5 or 6 way game of Tonks straight away. And it's just one of like peak hobby memories I will ever have
that's
is
great.
playing Tonks with my friends at Salute. With
Yeah,
this
brilliant.
kind soul who offered to run a demo game all day.
There you go.
But what was really lovely was as we went around the convention centre, occasionally I'd like cast an eye back to the demo table, and it seemed to be busy all day with young people, old people.
I was going to say, it's a crossover game, isn't it? Because obviously, like you spoke earlier about your dad being into like models and stuff, like probably tanks and planes and stuff, traditional kit models. This is something that they could probably get into quite easily, couldn't they?
Maybe pink and a spray paint. Everything else, probably. Yeah.
Of course, that'd be historically correct, not
Yes, it'd be a, you know, accurate tonk. So yeah, it's been lovely, and yeah, loads of people have.
So, have you any idea then? You've got a Linktree, and I guess your rules for the game, and they're beautiful as well. The rules are another visual feast. do you see every time they're downloaded? Does it count how many times they're downloaded? Do you know how many people have? No. Oh, that's a shame.
I think I can tell how many people visit my Linktree every day.
Okay.
But if someone's been, then they'll get the link to where the tools are, and then they'll probably just go straight to that. So
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's
Okay.
probably not trackable at
Yeah.
all.
Okay.
I can see how many people have downloaded my tanks because they're on Wargames Vault, so
Right.
I can log in and go to my account and see
Mhm.
how many people have downloaded those. But no, I have no idea how many people have downloaded Tonks.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Very interesting. There
No.
may be some way to find out because I mean, I imagine it's hugely popular and yeah. Well done, mate. I doff my cap to you, my hobby cap to
Thank
you.
you.
It's,
Thank you.
it's
Yeah.
great that
I
you know.
thought the second album would be difficult, but I think it was better than the first. So
I
as a
think,
result,
yeah. Well, you're very passionate about tanks, aren't you, as well?
I am.
So
Yeah,
that
it's a
shows you. It's not
bit of a thing. Yeah.
fishing, maybe not so much, but you like
I've
the.
never been fishing. I mean, I'm a fraud. I'm a complete fraud. I've never been fishing.
I,
I've still not painted up
so
a model boat.
I do fish, and you're missing out. You have got to go and try and get out into the real world, Ben, and do some fishing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, real world is. Oh, I don't know. Can't just stay at home and roll dice and paint toy
Brilliant.
soldiers.
I liked actually when you posted some pictures of your visit to Croatia. And you saw some of those crazy camouflage designs, and I've seen some of those
It's
before with
good.
like these weird acute shapes and everything, and they're like abstract
Yeah.
colours, and apparently that just disappears into the horizon. But
Apparently, yeah. Up close, it's pretty in your face.
yeah, I just thought
Yeah.
I can't wait to see some of these tanks when they come out
Yeah.
with some
I
inspired.
mean, I did a tiny little armored car the other day, and that was kind of was in a
Yes.
style similar to that.
Yeah.
And that was just the old blobs of blue tack technique, which
Oh
is
yes.
a nice quick way to do camouflage. You just spray it one color, it's a bit of blue tack, spray it another color, and then you're done.
It's clever.
It's all easy stuff. I'm quite impatient and lazy, so most of my methods are quick and nasty, really.
They're very effective, and I think that's what's encouraging me is that actually, and the whole point of this channel is to just sort of try and inspire people, meet my hobby mates, and have a good chat about stuff, but also sort of peel back, this facade, if you like, that this is too difficult for me. I can actually have a go, and you've very eloquently explained how brutal you are with your with your hobby creations.
Just hurry, go quicker,
Just
go
slap it on.
get it done.
I think that there is this creative element. So yeah, I'm sure, and I don't want to downplay, what you've said, but it is easy. The tools are easy. They're accessible and stuff like that. There is an eye for design. It's clear to see, and so you kind of learn that as well. You kind of develop that over time. So I'm not going to say, yeah, I totally agree with you. It is easy to pick up the tools and to see how someone else has done it, and you can think, yeah, I'll have a go. But you develop your own style of doing things. Anyone who tries something like this will come out with something, and this is the wonderful thing. They'll come out with their own stamp on it, and I could try and recreate what you do, and it'd just yeah, okay, well done. But I'd rather, now it's very easy to do the chipping and stuff like that now, and I know some of the tools, game on, but everyone's going to have their own unique take on things, aren't they?
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's wonderful.
That's part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
Like if everyone's stuff all look the same, it would be.
Oh, nightmare. But yeah, be encouraged. Yeah, if you're watching this and thought, I don't know if I can do this, you definitely can. It's the stuff is accessible. Just rewind it to earlier when Ben was talking about some of the materials that he used, and look them up. You'll see them on eBay or Amazon or whatever, readily available. And then get stuck in, break something, paint something. Have a laugh and not worry. I think that's the trouble. A lot of people, especially once they've started, they kind of choke on putting stuff out there for other people to see because they're worried they might, I could look at that tank and go, my goodness, look at, and I'm not going to put my tank out because actually, it doesn't look like Ben's. It's not as good, but so what? It's yours, isn't it?
That's one of the problems with social media, isn't it? Like you only put the hits up, right? You don't necessarily take a photo of the things that didn't turn out well. But I think the thing I would say is something I've done and benefited from a lot is asking people for help or asking them, oh, how did you paint that yellow? Or like the transfers, I reached out to Dan Streeting and I was like, how do you make transfers at home? And most people in this hobby are very, very nice, friendly, chatty people. So
totally agree.
If you like how someone did something, Mangling Minis makes incredible little candles on all of his Turnip models, and he did a tutorial post because I kept asking him, how do you make your candles? Most people are very keen to share their passion and in the hobby, and so yeah, just talk to people, and ask.
It is brilliant, isn't it? The community is very, very generous and loving, and excited about what they're doing. So
lovely people.
Yeah, it's great. I think, Ben, we've clocked up 2 hours just over. Time flies when you're having fun.
When you're talking about nonsense.
We finished on a high note there with how easy and how good the community is. So I think it's an opportune moment to say we'll end it here. And thank you very much for being on. It's been awesome fun.
No, thank you very much for inviting me to come on your stream and talk about stuff. And, I look forward to. Have you got any plans for who you're going to have on next?
I have some people in mind. I'm not sure which order of play they'll go in, but be sure I'm trying to explore all of the different sort of elements of it. So I've got one guy who does miniature busts painting.
Ah, cool.
So this would be a completely different tack from sculpting and kitbashing. It's like a purist sort of miniature painting. So and I've got another guy who won't mind me saying, but Grilly Paints does a lot of. It's Ben. Coincidentally, he's called Ben, Australian, and he's been doing a lot of commission painting. For Warhammer and that, so I think that'd be that'll float a lot of people's boat, for painting miniatures and especially Warhammer and stuff like that. And I think he's done something like 300 plus minis this year already, which is in his setup.
Pretty good going for.
I haven't even got 300 minis. Yeah, let alone paint. And gosh, I've painted about 5, I think. So yeah, we've got some interesting, mates that and that's the thing about this hobby, isn't it? It's just like there's no shortage of inspiration, no shortage of people that are wanting to share and stuff like that. So I'm just going to dip my bread and see how far we can push this puppy, because I think it's fun, gives people an option, or the opportunity to share their wear. So yeah.
Absolutely. No,
so yeah, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to have to sort that out. But I sort of had back to back with Jonas last week and yourself this week. I'll have to give the next. I'll probably have a week off next week and then see if I can sort something out for the following week. But yeah, more miniature mayhem to follow.
Excellent.
Okay, right. Bless you, mate, and take care. Speak to you soon.
Cheers. Thanks, Adam. Speak to you soon.